His seventh question is, what if Lightning Dust and Rainbow Dash were sisters? Okay, hear me out. Many fans don't like Lightning Dust, include myself, but she is an interesting character, and even though that she and Rainbow share some similarities, like they're fast flyers, dedicated to be a Wonderbolt, but there is actually also the difference, like Lightning Dust were pushing herself too much. She would making use of tornado in order to clear out the sky from clouds, even if they would put other ponies in jeopardy. So, if they were been sisters, well, I would have been saying, well, as biological sisters, let's say if they were biological sisters and that Rainbow and that Lightning Dust was separated by birth, and that Rainbow eventually learns the truth that she is sister to Lightning Dust. She would have been, well, she would be more as shocked and also, well, a bit, I would say terrified, but more as shocked and, well, devastated to learn that Lightning is her sister. But what if they were adopted sister? Like I say, what if that one day when Rainbow is going over to her family in Cloudsdale, and her parents reveals that they had a big surprise, that they decided to adopt a daughter. Of course, Rainbow would be really thrilled to have a sister, but when she introduced to Lightning Dust, she may actually been shocked and angry. Angry, it's, well, the more right, it would have been right word for that, and she would even question her parents to why they adopt her. I mean, if they didn't know about her past to Rainbow. But personally, that would have been quite shocked news for Rainbow. But if they were sisters, I think it would have been a big, devastating effect for Rainbow. She would even treat Lightning Dust as a sister. But if Lightning did show deeply remorse and also were reformed, could they be more like sisters? Maybe. Just a big maybe if Lightning showed remorse and all. His eighth question is, what if Scootaloo was Twilight's daughter? Okay, that reminds me a bit about Fluttershy when she was theorized to be Scootaloo's mother. So, assuming if that Scootaloo were Twilight's daughter, okay, that is an interesting idea. Well, I have to say, I actually kind of like the idea if Twilight were Scootaloo's mother. I mean, like if she was her biological mother, it would still pretty much been sweet. I mean, they had interacted so many times in the show. They have a true, genuine bond as friends. But I can see them as of the same bond as daughter and mother. But also the potential that, what if, like, say, Scootaloo's real parents passed away and that Twilight choose to be adopting Scootaloo? I think that's also as a good idea that could also be the potential to that. So I think either way, if she was her real mom or adopted mom, it would have been cute. His ninth question is, what your theory about Cozy Glow got her cutie mark? Well, first, interesting question. And another, knowing that her cutie mark looks like the chess piece from the game chess, Well, I don't think it has nothing to do with chess at all, since throughout the series, she never shown any form of interaction while playing the game, but it not necessarily had to mean that it has nothing to do with the game itself. Since we know that she was the mastermind when she was draining the magic from Equestria, with some assistance from Tyrek. So the tower, or at least that's what it also looks like, it may actually be, well, my theory maybe it has to do with something about her being scheming. Normally, if it's a tower, they can represent for like protection, safety, but I don't think in this case it's not about that. What if it had to do something about her scheming, about, say, her mastermind plan? So I think she got a cue mark before she moved to Ponyville about her plan of controlling the magic, or at least draining the magic, so she could get all the friends that she wanted. That is what I think is possible. His 10th question is, do you think Kosuglo could possibly be Pip's ancestor? Oh, now that is an interesting question. If you remember, she, along with Tyrek and Chrysalis, was turning into stone statue near the end of the G4 series. So, assuming if Cozy was somehow released from her stone statue prison at some point before G5 and was reformed and eventually moved to the place that would be Zephyr Heights, and also would be the first member of the royal family of Zephyr Heights. I know that might sound a little bit far-fetched, but I think it's a small possibility that she could maybe be related to Pip and Zip, and even their mother Queen Haven. I know that some fans may think, hey, Switch Diablo, that sounds really far-fetched. And I agreed, it might be that, but who even knows? It's also the possibility that she could be the ancestor of Pip. His 11th question is it okay to request a story for Easter at this time? If it's okay, here is a story request. Kosuglo Dimentora through Simply Audio Story. Yes, it is. In fact, I was thinking of making a new series called A True Sibling. So, and yes, I have already made a story, so it's gonna be posted on Easter. His 12th question is, what if Pip tried making adult music like rap, metal, and songs with dark themes and swearing? Would the Pipsqueaks still support her? Well, we haven't even seen rap or metal as much as back in even G4, so it's tricky. The only style of that's similar in Dark Clothing would have been God style. It has only been appearing like 3 times in G4. One of the computers for a fashion show in Ponyville looked to be almost like a god. Fluttershy was in the second when she was helping Rarity, and the third. And when Celestia and Luna would have their vacation, when Celestia would have their makeover to look like a god. So, but if Pip were making rap metal with songs with a dark theme and some swearing in it, well, the only type of the peepsqueaks that may actually support that is the adult peepsqueaks. Since her peepsqueaks followers not necessarily had to just be young children or teenagers. They were also adults. So I think more that the adult peepsqueaks might actually support her from that. But it's also a possibility they may not. The younger peepsqueaks may not even be that at all. They may actually be being told the swearing is a bad influence. But that also could be another potential that if Pip were to choose to make that type of style of music with dark themes and swearing, like in rap or metal, she may have been approached by many parents saying that she is making a bad influence on their children, or especially the younger peepsqueaks. So it might have been tricky. But as far as we can say, Pip hasn't even shown any signs of that type of interest or that type of style of music. But it's not saying that there isn't that she probably would. It just she hadn't even shown that much an interest, and we hadn't even seen any other ponies that's been into rap or metal music, as far as I can tell. But if you would, I have to say only the adult peepsqueaks might support Pip in that. The question about it. His 13th question is, if you ask me, I find Spike Rarity's ship a little creepy because Rarity is an adult and Spike is a child. So I would ship Spike with one of the Cutie Crusaders or Costiglo or Diamond Tiara. Well, Robert, that is one way to see it. And I know that there are in fact many fans within the fandom that really support Spike and Rarity as a shipping. But if we all think about this, Spike is a dragon. Even though he's a baby dragon, but that's not a small detail about just dragons that sets apart from the ponies. Not because he's a reptile and that Rarity is a mammal, or at least in case a pony. The age difference. Not because that he's a baby and that he's a full-grown mare. Because the dragon may actually age much slower compared to the ponies. It's only speculation though. There hasn't even been shown any source or even confirmed if a dragon in MLP-G4 age slower compared to the pony. Even though Spike may look to be just a baby, and even when he gets his wings, and another thing, like say Smolder. Smolder may look like he could be like an early teenager. That's another thing about it. She may actually not even be a teenager. She could actually be 18 or 20 years old. And same for Spike. We may assume that he is only 2 or perhaps 3 years old. The fact is, we don't even know. Spike can actually be, who knows, maybe 12 or maybe 10 years old, but still look as a baby. Dragons might actually age perhaps 2 or perhaps 3 times slower compared to a pony by age. So in fact, Spike may not even be a child in the sense that we think of. Spike can actually might even be a preteen or perhaps even be a teenager, just in a smaller stature. He may actually be 10 years old. He might even be a teenager, but just in smaller appearance. He might just be short. That's not think about it. Think about it. His 14th question is, what do you think about Helluva Boss, and who is your favorite character? Robert. I love Helluva Boss. I have seen every single episode so far of that show, and it's amazing. I mean, it's really good. But for about a favorite character, well, if I had to say for both male and female character, for male, it had to be Blitz. And female, now that had to be. Actually, that had to be Luna, the Hellhound. I mean, she is really good character in the whole series. She had some bad moments and some good moments. So I think Blitz and Luna had to be one of my favorite characters, and show is amazing. I highly recommend to anyone to watch this. His 15th question is, what if Scootaloo saw Lightning Dust as a sister instead of Rainbow Dash? Okay, okay. Considering when Lightning Dust came to Ponyville with the washouts, when she tried to put Scootaloo through, that would have been disaster. But yeah, in my opinion, it would have been a really bad influence on her. But there is another thing. Lightning Dust, well, if she were, is that, let's say if she lived in Ponyville instead for Rainbow Dash, and then Rainbow Dash was the bad one, and that Lightning Dust was a good one. Okay, that might have worked, but even so, even if that she saw her as a sister instead of Rainbow Dash, I know for a fact many fans may not even like that particular idea, because many sees Rainbow Dash as more like a big sister to Scootaloo. And honestly, I agree to that as well. But I really don't even like much idea itself to seeing Lightning Dust as a sister to Scootaloo. His 16th question is, what types of Pokemon do you think these ponies would have? Dimentora, Glow, Twilight Sparkle, Star Glimmer, Rarity, Apple Bloom, Misty, and Pinkie Pie. Well, for Dimentora, I had to say Fairy type. Glow, I may have to see more like Ghost type. Twilight, Psychic. Star Glimmer, I had to also to say Psychic for her. And Rarity, I meant to say Fairy type that's there. And for Apple Bloom, it had to be in Grass type. And for Misty, now that may actually be, surprising enough, Ghost type. And for Pinkie, well, knowing her Pinkie is how she is like, I may have to say, that's a good question though, but I have to say for Pinkie would have been actually Water type. That's what I think, at least for all of them. His 17th question is, what do you think about an audio series about Dimentora trying to be a better pony? Well, I actually like the idea. I really do. Considering how when she reformed herself, she was really a bad character. She was very much disliked by many fans. But after she realized her mistake being so mean to others, and that she was willing to do much effort to reform herself, so I think if I will do an audio series based on her from that time and her efforts onwards to reform herself to be much better and helpful, I actually like the whole idea. I do. It's a very interesting though. His 18th question is, what if Glow got the Carnage symbiote in the season 9 finale, How would a battle between Twilight and her friends versus Tyrek, Chrysalis, and Glow go if Glow has that kind of power? Okay, for a small detail, we know that Cozy is normally a Pegasus, but during this particular battle, she had transformed with help from magic to turn into an alicorn. So, with that in thinking that considering, as an alicorn, she got an advantage when using magic. But there was also a small disadvantage on that, because she just recently then transformed into alicorn, and she had not even no experience or practice of using magic. But the Carnage symbiote, well, if you remember, Venom, when he was merged with Eddie, gave him an increased power and so much things. But Carnage, which is much different from the Venom symbiote, um, if Cozy had been merged with the Carnage symbiote, it would give her an immense power and also strength and all, with the combination of her magic and also the ability to fly. So that itself, with her flying and her magic, would combine with the merge with the symbiote of Carnage, it might actually increase her power or her advantage by power of 10, or like 10 times more stronger. But like I said, the Carnage and the Venom symbiote are much different. I'm just bored to mention that. But here's what I think. With the merge with the Carnage symbiote, she would have been much more stronger. That's certain of that. But how would I even that say that she would even use that the new strength against Chrysalis and Tyrek during the battle, or maybe after the battle? But how would the battle be between? Well, still, Twilight has her advantage since she had been an alicorn for a little bit much longer than Cozy has, so she knows a lot more spells. And oh, it's a tricky question, but I think it's very possibility in the end Twilight and her friends would defeat Cozy despite being in her symbiote, Carnage symbiote. But it's a little bit tricky though. But I think definitely Twilight and her friends would eventually learn something, or at least to get an upper hand and defeat the trio. That is what I think at least. His 19th question is, what would the Equestria be like if Starlight won at the end of the Cutie remark? Well, if you remember that episode when Starlight tried to change timeline many times by a time travel spell, it showed a different outcome of her tries. One when there was Celestia winning a war against the Crystal Empire, one where Nightmare Moon had returned, and of course there was the one that was the most shocking, a complete wasteland. So, but if Starlight would have won, how would this Equestria be like? This is like what if, what kind of future scenario? And that is the small part of that. And I have to say, with the fact of the considering about the time travel, if she travels back in time, to prevent the main six to ever be friends, and also preventing the first sonic boom, the rain boom from that which Rainbow made, I have to say, even to predict the outcome, if what would happen if, or at least that the whole kingdom would be like if Starlight won, one word, unpredictable. The outcome of every time travel, when any change in the timeline, you can't even predict the outcome. It's basically impossible. Not even one of many experts can't do that. It's really impossible. But but if Starlight won, what I think it could be possible, she may actually be could have, perhaps have been Celestia's new personal student instead for Twilight. And I mean, like she could have been going back in time to prevent the first sonic rainbow that were the main six were seeing, and that they were never actually met. And she could perhaps try to convince her younger self to go to Canterlot to this, try to apply for School of Gifted Unicorns, and eventually being chosen as Celestia's new personal student instead for Twilight. Now that if that happened, it really would make some. She would eventually become the new princess, but of what title? Well, that's not a thing. I really have no idea. But that is what I think is the outcome if Starlight could have win in the end of that particular event. His 20th and final question is, do you think you could do an artist story about the Kurama Crusaders being friends with the Powerpuff Girls? Okay, now that is an interesting question. Since there actually have been one other crossover between MLP with another Hasbro show, which is Transformers in the comic books, so, well, considering that what was to happen, Chrysalis tried to make a new army, but her interfere with the Decepticons' space bridge tunnel, which caused them to end up in Equestria. But if it was like for Powerpuff Girls, let's say, what if the professor would invent a portal that would somehow transport them to a different world, and Powerpuff Girls was intrigued about this whole thing, by accident open the portal which transport them to Equestria. And that is how they meet the Kurama Crusaders, maybe near the Apple Farm. But here's the thing. Would they still remain as humans, or would they end up as ponies? That's actually kind of an interesting question, because, as you know, Pony Twilight, when she went to the human world, she ended up as a human. And when she went back to Equestria, well, she was as a pony. And this vice versa, when the human Twilight ended up in Equestria, she turned into a unicorn. So, if the Powerpuff Girls would end up in Equestria, they would definitely be as ponies. But what kind of ponies would be? That's actually tricky though. I wouldn't even be able to say that right now. But another thing, would they still have their powers? They're like flying. If they were all turned out as earth ponies or even unicorns, would they still been able to use their flying ability, Blossom with her ice power, and would Blossom be able to, or Bubbles be able to communicate with the animals like Fluttershy do? And yeah, that's a very interesting question. But I think, do I would even like to do a story about that? You know what? I actually like the idea. It is a very much an interesting idea. I admit. I would definitely love to do this as a story. And but yeah, that is all I think about it. I'm actually happy to be able to answer these questions from my friend Cody Lane and Robert Freeman, who asked me quite many questions each, but combined together was a total of 35. I was happy to be able to answer all their questions, and I admit, Robert did had some really interesting questions, and Cody also had some good questions too, and also of his own inputs of some of the questions what he thought about, especially when it was about Spike, and I totally understand and agree with him on that. And but yeah, these questions were really interesting. Even though there was only two people asked me this time, and I really hope that maybe next time might be more people to be able to ask me some more questions. And since this Q&A were when I had reached 9,000 subscribers, I think for the next Q&A would have to be when I reached 9,500 subscribers. So that's like 450 subscribers away. So until then, I will be looking forward to it. And I even might even do a Q&A when I reached 10,000. That might be even more far away for that, but I'm looking forward to. So to Robert and Cody, thank you for the questions and hope everyone likes them. And as always, this is Switch Diablo over and out.